With respect to the spread of misinformation, inaccurate information, and speculation, I just want to say that's harmful. It's harmful to the families and communities who are trying to work their way through a traumatic event. And so I really want to encourage people to be kind.
And the average social media sleuth could be risking far more than a slap on the wrist.
If it rises to the level of criminal harassment or threats, the police will certainly get involved and there can be criminal charges laid.
Canadian authorities are pushing back on online speculation about the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan from Nova Scotia, and I agree with the sentiment if they're not talking about simply giving an opinion. But even if they are, I don't answer to them. I answer to you, my subscribers, and you voted overwhelmingly for me to continue analyzing this investigation. So today that's exactly what we're going to do because there's two new developments that I think could crack the case if they're played right. I'm Deception Detective, an attorney trained in statement analysis. This channel exposes lies and manipulation, so if that's your thing, hit subscribe. For exclusives, early access, and other cool perks, consider becoming a channel member. Link in description. Literally thousands of my subscribers voted for me to continue analyzing this case, so I'm going to assume that we're all at least familiar with it. But the investigation itself into the case is a different matter because that's had twists and turns almost every 24 hours, including the last 24 hours. So before we grab our deception decks and start analyzing the investigation, here's a quick recap.
These woods, scoured for a week without a trace of two missing kids, about to be examined again. Officials now confirming the search surrounding the home of Lily and Jack Sullivan will resume Saturday, likely as a recovery effort.
The county as a whole and the province as a whole, I think, need to know what happened in this case.
Police say the 4- and 6-year-olds wandered away 2 weeks ago and said they had no evidence the children were abducted. But RCMP didn't announce the involvement of the Major Crimes Unit until days after it was brought in, nor that it hadn't ruled out that the disappearance was suspicious.
RCMP declined an interview request and would not answer our questions about the case. For instance, it isn't clear why investigators are so certain the children were not abducted, and officials have not said whether they know who, other than their family, was last with the kids.
Now, after dozens of police interviews and more than 180 tips from the public, still no answers.
It doesn't add up at many levels.
This criminologist questioning the way RCMP are sharing information about the case, relying on the public for tips, but giving few details.
Based on appearances, this went in the wrong direction early on, and key momentum and leads were lost when they were out in the fields looking for kids that maybe were never there.
This expert is zeroing in on other aspects of the disappearance, like school being closed, then the kids being homesick the following day.
The 2 days unaccounted before the missingness is just a red flag.
But for this worried community, what's top of mind now is that the search is resuming, whether for rescue or recovery. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia.
As I said in the intro, there's two developments that could potentially crack the case if they're played correctly. And that's the first one, that the search was paused and then resumed, because that could have been a ploy by the Major Crimes Unit to see how the parents would react. Did they plead for the searchers to remain there and continue looking the way we'd expect an innocent parent to do? Or did they simply shrug their shoulders and not protest too much? Or worse, celebrate the way that Darlie Routier did when she thought that she'd gotten away with it?
Happy birthday to you.
Then, on what would have been Devon's 7th birthday, there at the graveside, Darlie spraying silly string.
I was in disbelief.
It was on the local news, and the prosecutor was watching.
If you knew Devon and Damon, you would know that they're up in heaven, and they're up there having the biggest birthday party that we could ever imagine.
What kind of cold individual can stand out there at a graveside and joke about children who have been killed 8 days earlier? And no grieving mother can do that, in my opinion.
If you've seen the rest of my video about Darlie, you'll know that I think the prosecutors read too much into that silly string incident, but it was what prompted them to look deeper into her. So that could be what's going on here with the RCMP. They were waiting for some sort of bizarre behavior from either of the parents when they thought the search was over. But they could have also been watching the parents to see if they did anything that provided new leads to them, like driving to a remote location all of a sudden now that they thought no one was watching them, or resuming communication with each other after they made a big hoopla about not doing that anymore, and potentially saying something incriminating or suspicious like syncing up their stories or expressing how happy they are that they got away with it or anything else. But we'll probably have to wait a long time to find out if my hunch about that development being a ploy is correct because the Canadian police are so tight-lipped They are masters of tactical silence. So let's move on to the second development that I think could crack the case, and this one's potentially more interesting because it hasn't fully played out yet, the way that the pause and resumption in the search has. If you've binged all my videos in this series, you'll know I was very excited when Daniel Martel said this, but I haven't heard anything about it since.
You said they're flying in someone to do a polygraph test. Is that on you?
That's not just on me, but on everyone. That's what I asked for. I asked for that so early on, and there's not many places that do it in Canada, so they're flying somebody in.
Why do you think you need to do that? Do you think they don't believe you?
I think their side of the family doesn't believe me, and I just want to clear it up for everyone. Clear it up for everyone, not just the people online making crazy accusations.
The fact that Daniel offered to do a polygraph is great on its own, because while polygraphs are fallible, I've explained my many issues with them in multiple videos, it could give police more data to work with. But what really jumped out to me when I first heard this was Daniel saying that the polygrapher had to be flown in because there aren't many in Canada, which doesn't make much sense if you're talking about a standard polygraph because all you need is one polygrapher to administer it, and there's plenty of those in Canada. So Daniel might have already been laying the groundwork for his excuse when he's confronted later about why he still hasn't done one. In other words, he was bluffing, or the RCMP, and I hope this is the case, convinced him to do a more unique type of polygraph with fewer experts. And that's the guilty knowledge test polygraph, which is mainly practiced in places like Japan. Rather than monitoring whether or not the subject is lying or telling the truth, instead it monitors their orientating reflexes, or the small imperceptible things that we do naturally when we recognize something. So the administrator might say something like, "Did you have fentanyl in your house? Did you have weed? Did you have cocaine?" To an innocent person, all these options are equally random, so the theory is that they don't react to any of them. But a guilty person would react to the one that they recognize. You can learn more about this test and all its fallibilities. I'm not saying it's any less fallible than any other sort of lie detection technique in the DD forum. But my main hope is that this is the sort of polygraph Daniel Martel is going to do, because I think this case is uniquely suited to it. And Daniel Martel, if you're watching this, and maybe you are, after all you've said in previous interviews that you're monitoring social media, I've not made up my mind about you. I think you know more than you're saying. So if you're open to an interview, at the very least, I can get your story out to more people. And at the very best, if I'm satisfied with your answers to my questions, I will be your biggest advocate on YouTube. You can contact me through the DD forum or deceptiondeck.com. And as a PSA to my subscribers, although I don't think they need this, and anyone else watching, this channel does not exist to harass, bully, or intimidate anyone that we analyze. Check the end card for my playlist about this case. If you want more, let me know by liking, commenting, and sharing. Until next time, stay true.